Very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Worldview. Let's look at international headlines for you, including that attack that happened in London. This is Worldview. Thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at our highlights this afternoon. President Uhuru Kenyatta discusses security and bilateral relations with Somalia's Mohamed Farmajo ahead of an IGAD summit. Britain remains defiant a day after a vehicle and knife attacker rained terror in the heart of London. We'll bring you the story of the man behind the cashless bus innovation in Rwanda. Welcome to the program. We want to begin from right here in Nairobi, where visiting Somali President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo has just held a meeting with President Uhuru Kenyatta at State House here in Nairobi. This is Farmajo's first state visit since being sworn in as president a month ago. His arrival comes ahead of a special summit on the Intergovernmental Authority on Development. Talks with President Uhuru Kenyatta centered on bilateral relations between the two nations. President Kenyatta pledged to offer Kenya's technical support and capacity building assistance to the federal government, institutions and other sectors based on mutual agreement. All right, let's bring in Mark Namasa, who has been following this story for us. Mark, good afternoon. Good to speak to you. So President Uhuru Kenyatta speaking with the Somali president. That is a country that is reeling from the effects of civil war. What sort of assurances does the President Uhuru Kenyatta give the Somali president?
President Uhuru Kenyatta has spoken about the border issue between Kenya and Somalia. Remember, Kenya and Somalia share a very broad and long border. And he has said that the border between the area known as Doble and Mandera will be open so that citizens of both Kenya and Somalia can be able to freely move back and forth. And remember the issue about refugees, the Dadaab refugee camp. President Uhuru Kenyatta has assured the Somali president that he will facilitate the training of human resource capacity to be able to boost Somali's public service delivery. For instance, he has promised that training of nurses, teachers and other administrative staff will be done right from the Dadaab refugee camp, so that as the refugees move to integrate with their fellow countrymen in Somalia, they will be able to receive services that have been inculcated in the staff that have been trained in Kenya. President Uhuru Kenyatta has also assured the Somali counterpart that flights will be resumed, direct flights between Mogadishu and Nairobi back and forth will be resumed or will start off in the next 2 weeks. Back to you.
Namaso, those are very encouraging utterances by Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta. We do know that the meeting comes just a few hours to the IGAD summit. Did they touch on it? What are some of the expectations that probably the Somali president has?
First and foremost is that the IGAD summit will specifically dwell on the Somali issue, the refugee issue in Somalia, apart from other issues such as the humanitarian crisis in Somalia. So starting from tomorrow, 24th, before the summit officially kicks off on Saturday, 25th, there will be a meeting between ministers that are concerned with refugee issues, internal security issues across the IGAD member states, such as those nations in the Horn of Africa. So they will be having their major theme, Somalia being their major theme. They will be discussing how to deal with the refugee crisis. They'll be discussing how to deal with the insecurity crisis that has been made worse by the Al-Shabaab issue. They'll also be discussing the humanitarian crisis and how to approach it from the Somalia or from the Somali point of view. Back to you.
It would be interesting to talk about the humanitarian assistance and, of course, the role that AMISOM is now playing in Somalia. And it's interesting that you mentioned the issue of refugees. Remember, Kenya has made it very clear that it wants to close the Dadaab refugee camp. Most of the people who are in that camp come from Somalia. Remember, the other day as well, President Uhuru Kenyatta spoke to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on the same. Did they too touch on this? How is this going to work, probably taking them back to their country?
Because they were discussing a broad range of issues, but mainly appreciating the fact that Somalia now has a new government and is on the path to achieving an acceptable level of democracy. But the issue of refugees and Somalia and the humanitarian crisis cannot be underrated. Remember, looking at Somalia's population, it is about, according to the United Nations, Somalia's population is about 11 million people. And out of that, roughly 2 million have been affected or displaced. They have close to 1 million IDPs within Somalia and another roughly 500,000 outside Somalia. So the issue on Somalia is quite touchy. The numbers, if we have roughly 2 million Somalis displaced from their homes, that brings us to about 18% of the population, which is almost a fifth of Somali's population. So that is a really heavy issue when we talk about Somalia. So the theme of the IGAD summit will revolve around the Somali issue, and that is what they will be dwelling on starting from tomorrow and on to Saturday when the IGAD summit officially kicks.
Mark, listen, President Uhuru Kenyatta talked about the wall that was supposed to be created, sort of a border between Kenya and Somalia, but he also said they will create 2 entry points between the 2 countries.
Yes, although he talked about the wall on a light note, he said that while people are talking about building a wall, we are discussing on creating entry points. That basically means that he's not really for the idea of completely shutting out Somalia from issues that are around East Africa. Basically, he was reassuring the Somali president that the main agenda or the best way forward for the regional stability is being able to fully integrate Somalia in the development agenda of East Africa and the Horn of Africa in general. Back to you.
Thank you so much. So the 2 leaders held that meeting and that presser at State House in Nairobi this a couple of hours ago. Let's listen into what they both had to say.
Indeed, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome President Mohammed today on his first official visit to Kenya after his election as president. Indeed, let me begin by saying I was honored to represent Kenya at his inauguration. The event itself was a celebration of Somalia's democracy, which I was pleased to attend. It is also a pleasure to return the honor by hosting President Mohammed here in Nairobi, and we say, as we say in Swahili, karibu sana, Nairobi. President Mohammed is no stranger. He has previously served his country as a diplomat and also as Prime Minister. Kenya, like Somalia, is grateful for the diligence and skill with which he handled his heavy responsibilities as Prime Minister. And we welcome him to Kenya not only as a new president, but an old friend.
Today is a new day. We discussed how our 2 brothering countries can work together to grow and prosper together. Kenya is one of the Somali's strongest ally and partners in East Africa, from hosting the largest number of Somali refugees for decades and contributing the peace building and stability in Somalia through AMSOM. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Kenyan government and the Kenyan people for the sacrifices they have made to help Somalia. Cooperation between our 2 great nations is necessary to combat the challenges we face, including terrorism and poverty. This state visit is a continuation of close cooperation between our two countries in security, investment, and trade. Close economic cooperation between Somalia and Kenya will not only help to improve the lives of our millions of people, but also it will also enhance the security situation in East Africa. Therefore, my government is ready to work very closely with your government in the realization